I'm Kaylee Voss here with Rick McCow of SummerNet, and we're going to go over the costs of building and maintaining a website. So Rick, tell us about some of the costs that people might encounter when they start a new website.
It's a tricky topic because every time you even say, what does it cost to do this or what does it cost to do that? I mean, I gotta kind of just say we gotta come up with some numbers to talk about and ways that we get around to getting to those numbers. So, basic principle, I guess, to start with would be, what does it cost to build one page of a website?
Okay, so we start with one page. Take us through what we should expect, or what a new person should expect with that page.
Yeah, so from our point of view as web designers, we look at, if we have to shoot photography or purchase photography, do Photoshop to the image.
Yeah.
That would be one cost. The cost would be for writing the copy. There's another cost for the actual design of the website, getting it graphically and pleasing, condition.
Right.
So if you took all those into separate professions, then I'm just going to throw numbers out. So let's just say that at the end of that day, it costs $500 to build a page.
So that's just a general example, not nothing.
There's things that you do that can change prices, but let's just use that as this concept of what we're trying to talk about. So then
okay.
What I would assume then is that if I wanted to build a website, and let's say there was 10 pages, then we're talking about a fixed price of about $5,000.
Okay, so we've got so the business comes in, so they say, okay, we're going to get a 10-page site. It's going to be about $5,000. Is that all they've got to do?
No. So one of the things that I look at the difference between a fixed price and a ongoing expense. So if you came back and we say, okay, the goal was to spend $5,000 in building this website, and I say, okay, we are going to try to restrain and control ourselves within that expense. But if you wanted to look at it, ongoing expenses with that, you kind of need to consider those things. Like there's one good example that I like to put out there is a web designer is really going to work on trying to build and construct and finish those pages within that budget. They're really not going to do too much pre-production work. And they definitely really don't want to do the post-production work.
So explain that. Why is that such a big issue? If a designer's doing a site, why is that something that a client needs to know or doesn't know?
I think it limits the ability to expand beyond the limits of what a web designer is contracted to do. So
if you're talking about pre-production costs and talking about SEO, why is it important for a client to understand that you have to think about some of these things like SEO before you do the design?
Yeah, I would kind of give the analogy of building a house and having an interior designer step in before the house is built. So let's just say you have this idea of having this fireplace, and then in your mind it was made out of wood. But by having the designers come in place, they can kind of incorporate more of the house, and maybe the recommendation is that it should be made out of a stone place or some other material that's going to help complement the way the house is built, and still give you the design that you want.
So if you had hired the interior designer before you had the house built, then you would have saved a huge amount of cost rearranging things.
Yeah, I think a typical experience that you see with SEO is that it comes in afterwards, and then you have to deconstruct the site and then reconstruct it to meet this SEO parameters. I think a lot of that cost could be avoided if it was done earlier. So
Yeah, that's a great point. And most clients don't know that, right?
Yeah. So it's what you don't know is what you really don't know. And you can't ask the questions if you don't know what you don't know. So
Yeah.
it's a typical uh, dilemma. You know. I wanted to kind of go over the ideas of fixed costs versus ongoing costs too. So in this example, if once the site is done, then you can say, well, we got this fixed cost to have the site at $5,000, then that's it, we're done. You know, but there are other costs that you should consider. I think it's very important to consider.
So if you put up a site, finished budget, the designers are done, site's up, hosted online, then what happens next?
I would say that's when the ongoing process of making the site work continues. So you have costs to maintain the site. You're going to have costs to, small costs with the registrations, domains, and things like that. If you enter into the marketing side, there's a whole gamut of ways to market your website.
So, okay, so take us through some of the basic maintenance costs that you might encounter.
Well, if a company has, again, from my philosophy is a website is never finished. So as the company grows and the company has different directions that they're going into, or they add more products, or they reduce things, the maintenance should reflect that. And there's man hours involved in doing that kind of work. So that is an ongoing expense.
Now we've got the other ongoing costs, which are marketing. So once you put a site up, you've got to promote it. You've got to tell people about it. And so what are some of the things that a website owner should expect to do for the promotion?
Well, there's these tried and true methods out there that are pretty acceptable practices now. SEO is one of them, pay-per-click, email campaigns, social media. These all require man hours to step behind them. Some of them require additional costs. As in pay-per-click, you're not only just paying for the clicks, but you also have to pay somebody to construct the sites and figure out how they're going to run the campaigns, rechecking the campaigns to make sure they're still on target. I mean, there's ways to even optimize campaigns to say you want to save more money in your spend. You gotta spend time to analyze it. So all this man hours behind it is part of the cost to run a site. I mean, you can say that if all I want to do is have a static site and I'm not going to include any of this other stuff into it. I just feel like you're losing the return on investment is much more valuable if you include these parts into your site.
So with the marketing, those are some very specific things. You know, doing the paid ad campaigns, putting banners together, and watching it, and watching your your actual daily ad spend, and that's something usually done by a specialist, right?
Yeah, I mean, it ranges from all different size companies too. So if it's a small business, most of the times they're going to be restricted by budget concerns and by workload. The person's working on building this company is not going to really put the efforts into making sure he can even market or understand why he needs to market the website. And a lot of times, if you work on hour man-hour wise, then it's usually a better deal to hire a specialist to come in and perform those pieces of work, because they can, one, they understand it better, and two, they can do it quicker.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole service part comes in. I mean, that's all part of it's what we offer to clients, try to give them a better return.
Yeah. So, aside from the SEO and the paid search and email and social media, is there anything else people should expect to pay for or to work with on an ongoing basis for their website?
So yeah, for me it's analytics. There's parts of research that are ongoing, and there's also project management. So if you are running all these campaigns and say, I'm not an SEO specialist, but you are, there should be at some level a manager that's responsible for all the web assets to make sure that the budgets are adhered to and that somebody can communicate to all these different channels. Just the difference between a web developer and a web designer, there's a whole different language that needs to be spoken to get these people to understand what it is you're trying to do. And those are all problems on their own. And my analogy back to that would be if you had a general contractor working on the house, he's going to perform the services and hire all the subs to do all the specialty work, all the plumbing and all the electrical. But he has the contacts, he knows how to get these people to perform, he knows what's needed to pass code. And so that service is of value. So I would say the general contractor is equal to a project manager in that sense. They have to know what the costs are going to be to do that job and to make sure that jobs get done.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. That gives people a good idea of not just the cost and effort of creating a site, but what it takes and what's involved in maintaining it, updating it, and marketing it.
Yeah, I would say kind of if we're going back to that $5,000 website, if that's any kind of a challenge, I would say if you budget that website to be, out of a year's marketing budget, then that should be an ongoing expense to continue all these other services and try to, even that could be low. You can spend 10 times more marketing to people to tell you that you exist than what it costs to initially get that thing up.
Yeah, and if online marketing is going to be your main focus, or your main method of promoting your business, it'd probably be a lot higher, I would expect.
Yeah, and you gotta just balance that with what are your budgets. So a lot of the times when I start, I ask the question, I said, what is your marketing budget? How much are you willing to spend online? How much are you willing to spend offline? Or how are you best spending that budget? And then part of coming in as a project manager, you got to say, okay, if you got this much, what's the smartest way that we can apply the spend? And it could be the whole gamut of things.
Luckily, you've got analytics and testing.
Yeah, that's the side of online that definitely is trackable.
Okay, so that's the economy of a website. What's involved in the beginning, the middle, and the end of a website project, which, as Rick mentioned, is never really over, as your business is never really over. So, thanks, Rick, and this is Candy Voss with NetPath.net. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.